Okay, Windows is doing it again, Brad.
The definition of it, I think, could apply to any number of things, but go on.
You know the thing where you update your video card drivers or like a monitor turns off or turns back on and then your audio inputs change and you're like, why is sound coming from my monitor instead of the only audio interface I ever use?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Windows 11 had never done that until about 2 weeks ago to me.
It's regressing.
I was excited about using Windows 11 because it didn't happen. Never happened. Windows 10, every time monitor, you turn off, you knock a power cord on the monitor, all of a sudden all your audio inputs and outputs are jacked. But Windows 11, no, you hit the button that says, hey, don't ever use this one. And it's like, yo, man, I'm never going to use this one. But now it uses it every time.
Have you ever felt that your house was haunted or been like psychologically disturbed when that happens? When the output changes to your monitor, at least on these monitors, the way the sound kind of comes out of the back of the monitor, it's like, is somebody playing Doom next door to me? You know what I mean? Like, is there a ghost in here that is playing these event sounds? Like, sound should not be coming out of a screen in that fashion.
No, I wish I could just turn it off. It doesn't let me turn it off.
Can you not disable the device in like the playback device? Or does it just, is that what it's doing? It's undoing the disabling?
Every time I update video card drivers, and since we're into game release season, it's video card update season. Every time I update the video card drivers, it's like, hey, man, you got a new audio device here that I think you might really want to use. It's a little tiny speaker. It's hanging off of the back of your monitor, and it's going to make your sound really, really terrible.
Isn't the whole point of a monitor to be a screen and nothing else?
Monitors are better when they're screens and nothing else.
I've said for years, I think there's a whole market for TVs there that are screens and nothing else, but
I'm just saying screens should be seen and not heard. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
Hi, Brad. Hi. Hello.
Hi. Hello. Hi.
Hello, hi.
I was watching the piggies when you were up doing other things a minute ago. I was hoping that I would see a glimpse of a piggy, but I did not because your chair was in the way.
I can just wheel out of the way right now. What do you see?
I see a lot of bright colors. Oh, I see a pig. Hello, piggy. It looks like she's eating, or she's nosing around the food bowl. Nope, she's shy. She went back into the hutch.
She knows you're talking about her.
I know. She can tell. Probably your monitor speakers are on.
It's probably yes. Probably yes. Computers.
Yeah. How do they work? What do we even do, man?
Can't live with them. Can't live without them. Take my computer, please.
Every time something weird happens, like this Windows 11 thing, I'm increasingly of the opinion that I should just install Windows 98 and go back all the way. One core. That's all I need.
That's right. That's all anybody needs. Bill Gates said that.
Yeah. Put Glide on there. I'll play some Quake World. Everything will be better.
That's right. Is there a Vulkan Glide wrapper out there?
Man, okay. I think we have to do an episode about this. This is a Q&A episode, but I want to digress for a minute because our engineer Dan at the studio tried this DirectX Vulkan wrapper on our game the other day, which wraps DirectX 11 games to the Vulkan wrapper
from DXVK.
DXVK, yeah. That they use for the Steam Deck. And it completely changed the performance of the game in really weird and unexpected ways. Not necessarily, I mean, it had some issues, so we're not going to actually ship it probably, but like it was a really, really interesting experiment in like what's weird. Because like DirectX 11 temporal AA is really expensive for whatever reason. And all of a sudden, like turning that on and with the VK version, like was much better or whatever. It was a neat experiment. We should do a DXVK episode, I think, because it's pretty neat.
But that sounds good. We have a FOSS-Pod in the works in that vein, let's say.
Oh, yeah. We haven't put that out yet, huh?
A forthcoming FOSS-Pod, I swear, is still forthcoming.
Yeah. Well, we were in the game release season, and I'm trying to ship a game. Yes. So both of us are busy, not side project busy, but just busy.
Have you kept up with the Alan Wake 2 stuff? I don't want to say controversy because I don't want to get into the whole like people yelling at each other on Twitter about should a 3070 be able to do better than 1080p, blah blah blah, or not. But they shipped a game that a 3070 won't run 1080p. Have you not seen this at all?
No, dude, I haven't. I found out that we elected a Speaker of the House 36 hours after it happened.
It was
not good.
Definitely after the fact for me too. Boy, that was a rude awakening. Let me see if I can find it here. There's an infographic they put out. I'm just trying to find that infographic.
While you're looking, I will say that people have very strange ideas about what should be able to run what.
That's exactly it.
People are like, oh, this is we make a game that is admittedly a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead. So people who have machines that are really, really good at Left 4 Dead look at our game, which came out in 2022, and expect it to offer similar performance that their machine does with Left 4 Dead, which came out in 2012 or 2009 or something. People are like, oh, I have a 1080 and 16 gigs of RAM. And then they're like, I'm not able to run this at 1080p ultra settings at 120 frames a second. And I'm like, well, dog, I'm sorry, because that is not going to, like, you need to upgrade your computer if you would like a modern game that shipped on Unreal 4.27 in 2022 and has 80 or 100 enemies on the screen at any given time to run, performantly.
Yeah, I think this is some of that, and also some of the Alan Wake requirements actually are genuinely like kind of eye popping.
But it's a Xbox Series X native game, right? See, this is where we're like Spider-Man 2, when PlayStation, when Insomniac releases the PC specs for that, people are going to be shocked.
So that's another interesting one where I did not realize this until I saw people pointing it out. Every performance profile, every like rendering mode or whatever in Spider-Man 2 on the PS5 uses ray tracing. There is no even the most cut down performance mode, frames overall mode, still uses ray trace reflections. So when they ship that game on PC, it's presumably going to require a GPU that can do ray tracing.
Yeah, it's going to be at 2080 or higher, probably would be my guess.
Or they could always do the work to do cube maps or whatever. They could bother to do that on PC, but there's no guarantee they will.
Yeah, I mean, they're still using. Okay, so what's going on with the Alan Wake thing?
The reason I brought it up was Alan Wake will not run on 1080s on Pascal cards.
Oh,
the 1080 Ti that generation. Also will not run on AMD 5000 cards, which are much newer than that. But
yeah, that's a weird choice.
In both cases, it's because those cards don't support the full DX12 Ultimate spec. So they're using, I think, mesh shaders, I believe, is the specific feature they're using that those cards don't support. So part of this was me talking about a Vulkan wrapper for Glide for 3DFX and thinking about like how many generations of hardware features behind that card is that could not do Vulkan. But this is a much more recent example though of like, 1080 came out, I think 7 years ago is if I'm not mistaken. And like
I was using a 1080 when PUBG came out.
Right.
So that would have been 2017.
Yeah. So like 6 years ago. It is an old card, but at the same time, in my mind, it doesn't feel like it's that old, but it's just because it's had such long utility, right?
Well, also there were a couple of slow generations in there because of the pandemic.
Yes.
Like things like the 2080 lasted a really long time because the 3080s launched during the pandemic and nobody could buy them.
Yeah.
That's an unfortunate, like, on one hand, look, progress marches ever onward. On the other hand, also, I mean, we said this when the ray tracing cards started coming out 2-3 years ago now, that this was these consoles were going to cause a reset in what you should expect on frame rates for PC stuff, especially. And to like some extent, the 4090 being available has kind of counteracted that, but also that's a $1,500 video card. So like, I don't think it's exactly realistic to expect people to buy $1,500 video cards.
Agreed.
I'm curious to see what the reaction is. That's also Epic only, right?
Yes, that is an Epic published game, so that will likely never come to another PC storefront.
That also means it's not on. It's because Remedy's owned by Microsoft, right?
No, they're independent.
Oh, they're independent still. I assumed it was going to be on Game Pass but I guess it probably will never be on Game Pass then.
Probably not.
Boy, that's interesting.
Yeah. Anyway,
well, yeah. I mean, a lot of people bought Control.
Yes, Control is great. Alan Wake, the reviews came out this morning at the time of this recording. Reviews are extremely positive.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, maybe we'll get into this stuff maybe more at a later time. For now, it's time to answer some questions.
So if people have questions, they can email us to techpod@content.town. Or if you're in the Discord, if you're a patron, which meant you went to at some point patreon.com/techpod, signed up, and then you got access to the Discord, you can go to the question seeking answers channel, just post them there. They'll disappear into the void and we'll see them at the end of the month. Should we do this first question about like a lot of people had cold brew suggestions for you, Brad, and they almost all had the same answer.
Yes. Spencer in DC wrote in about this. Oh no. I looked up a pronunciation before we did this, so I would be prepared, and I have now forgotten it. I think, okay, well, I'll give it my best shot. Okay, Spencer in DC. I experienced the exact same cold brew filtering problem that Brad described in episode 205. What I was talking about was trying to filter all the junk, the silt, out of my cold brew. And basically just having it not go through the filter and just kind of sit there and take forever. That was the problem. Spencer says, I tried a bunch of cheesecloth and found it all lacking in consistency and reusability. My solution was the hilariously named nut milk bag. I originally purchased the bag to make... Okay, go ahead. Get it out. Get it out.
Nut milk.
Are you good?
I think so.
Sure. Okay.
Nut milk.
Nut milk bag.
What kind of nuts, Brad? How do you get milk out of nuts?
Well, let's read on.
Okay.
I originally purchased the bag to make orgeat, I believe is how you say that. ORGEAT.
I would call that orgeat.
Is the spelling there. Orgeat is the pronunciation that Google gave me.
Okay.
Which is a kind of almond syrup.
Ooh.
For Mai Tais. But it works well for cold brew filtering as well. I have both cotton and nylon, but the nylon does work better.
So I looked these up, and the nylon looks like exactly what my cold brew filter bag is made out of.
Interesting. Yeah, I looked them up too. It's like $12 on Amazon for the kind of no-name brand one I found.
Yeah, you can get a generic nut milk bag real cheap these days.
They're just giving those things away.
Nut milking needs.
Do you wash it in the sink like as if it were a dish?
I'm sure that they come with maintenance instructions.
Yeah.
I assume you rinse them out. Like my Hario filter, I just chuck in the dishwasher.
Okay. That would probably work here too.
And I've been doing it for 10 years at this point. It's held up fine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You just type nut milk bag into Google, you find all kinds of stuff.
Just make sure the bag is on there when you search for nut milk, though. That's my only advice.
Fair. All right. Okay. I want to read an email that came in last month that I thought about reading last month and did not.
We kind of went over last month too. So
I'm sure that's a fascinating detail for everyone, but I'm going to read it now. But it is about a topic from a couple months ago. This is an email from Dawson. I was delighted to see this email.
We were both pretty excited about this email, I'll be honest.
Dawson says, I apologize for the late email, but I was listening to the Q&A show from the last week of August, and you mentioned you were curious about the Apple Copeland process and also the Microsoft Windows XP security reboot. As it happens, I was there for both. I wrote the CD-ROM file system in 1993 for Apple Copeland, and I was in the peer-to-peer networking group during the Microsoft security reboot around 2001, as I recall. I won't bore you with a lot of details, but my impression of each was Apple Copeland, pronounced like the composer Aaron Copland. I think I was pronouncing it Copland when we talked about it a couple months ago.
I think that's I always pronounce it Copland too, so now we know.
Since also come to realize that error because I've watched a bunch of YouTube videos about it since then. Apple Copeland started with a very nice microkernel called New Kernel, and then tried to build an OS on top of it. It was bottoms-up design at its worst. They built clean and pretty APIs, but spent years polishing the low-level APIs and never trying to solve a real customer problem. There's a great video of Jobs being a bit ruthless, but also very correct right after he returned to Apple, where he was killing projects and explaining that great technology that does not solve a concrete customer problem is useless. I was in the file system group working for Steve Szymanski when I worked on this project, but had left Apple to go back to grad school by the time Jobs arrived. I wasn't there for the final end of the project, but the whole Copeland project seemed to be wandering around and lacked any sense of urgency. Microsoft Security Month was a different story. For years, Microsoft had been trying to make computers easier to use, and the mantra was, quote, it just works. Usually this means everything defaulted to on and required little configuration to make something happen. Of course, this means low security. I had just finished designing the Microsoft streaming video server and was completely burned out, so shifted over to the peer-to-peer networking group, which built Network Plug and Play. That was sort of like a computer boots, broadcasts itself to the local network, and then will run arbitrary commands from anyone on the network. Okay, that is a bit of an overstatement, but not by very much, and there was just no way to make it secure. At the same time, in response to several high-profile virus and worm attacks, the whole company stopped all new development work and spent a month reviewing the current code base for security bugs. Part of the goal was to emphasize to all engineers that security is now a top priority. We spent the first few days doing a training course, which was really nice, and did coding examples like write a stack smash attack to use an unchecked string copy command to inject an executable code. Then we spent the rest of the month reading every line of our code for security weaknesses and filing bugs. Of course, peer-to-peer was designed to be insecure, so it required big changes, and I left soon after, around 2002, to join some friends who had started at VMware. I believe network plug and play was killed soon after this.
Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah. I mean, that's right in that window where you would have been running unprotected Windows 2000 on the internet, as we have famously documented, right?
Yeah, I had a Windows 2000 server machine that was the router for my network at home, that I got a nice letter from my ISP that was like, yo, you should probably fix that computer because it's got a bunch of nasty shit on it.
Yes.
We're going to turn off your internet in 24 hours unless you do that.
And it's been a good long while, but I think we talked about this fairly extensively in the ranking of Windowses, right? When we talked about XP and like what a mess it was and how SP2, Security Pack 2, kind of system.
Yeah, XP2, SP2, yeah.
SP2 was like what kind of made XP actually like usable and somewhat secure.
Well, I mean, XP was good. Like the launch was good and it was fast and it was Windows XP. It was Windows NT for normal people, right? Like that was the exciting thing about it. But yeah, the like Blaster and all the different worms that came for Windows that just spread on their own. It was a dark time for people without routers, because also everybody just plugged their computer, because they only had one computer, directly into the cable modem. Wi-Fi was really rare then at home. And like you didn't have like a laptop and a desktop on the same network. You just plugged everything in and it all got an IP address that put it out on the wild internet. And it was like a perfect storm of bad news for Windows XP, because like if this had happened 2 years later, if the worms had all hit 2 years later, then most people would have been insulated behind routers, because you could buy, a WRT 54G or something that was $100 a year or two later, and everybody had laptops and phones and stuff that were on Wi-Fi shortly after that. So if I were doing the ranking of Windowses again, I think I might separate out Windows XP pre-SP2 and Windows XP post-SP2 into two separate releases, because sort of two wildly different approaches to network.
Did SP2 also, I think we covered this as well, did SP2 add user accounts to XP?
No, XP always had user accounts. That was one of the features that it brought with from XP.
Got it.
Or from 2000 and NT. Yeah.
I
mean, 95 had user accounts too, but there was no like system level permissions and all that stuff.
Or even home folders then, I don't think.
I think you had individual user home folders, but they weren't like the permissions didn't prohibit one user from seeing another user's home folder like on Unix or Linux.
Thank you to Dawson for writing in. I love hearing stories from people who were there. Yeah,
the Copeland thing is fascinating, because like that's a weird time when they're like, Apple was in trouble, right?
Oh yeah,
and the lack of the fact that there was no sense of urgency, and presumably also somebody running the company who didn't really understand what they were doing.
Is John Scully, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah,
The Pepsi guy. Do you want to be selling sugared water for the rest of your life? Maybe he should have.
Yeah, would have probably been better for a lot of people. But anyway, it's a lovely email.
Yes, thank you so much. There is a video. Well, there's a lot of old retro computing stuff on YouTube that is great these days. But are you familiar with the channel Dave's Garage? I believe it's called.
Oh, I've seen Dave's Garage before.
Like, I don't watch a ton of it, but like if you have any, if the YouTube algorithm has in any way started biasing YouTube tech stuff, you're probably going to see some of his like I wrote Windows Task Manager, or, like the dark secrets of File Explorer copy. Like he was a coder at Microsoft, I guess, but now he largely like documents a lot of old Microsoft stuff. He's got you probably know this name. I had not heard it before. He's got a 3-hour interview with Dave Cutler that just went up. You familiar?
Wow.
Cutler apparently was like one of the main architects of Windows NT, and like kind of ran all of the Windows, or not all, but like he was one of the head he's like a Microsoft Distinguished Fellow now, or whatever you call like people that have kind of earned their like legendary legacy
Microsoft
status.
stars.
Yes.
Yeah, he was one of there was a team inside Microsoft early in the 90s that was like, hey, we have to make a we should be competing with Unix.
Yes, that's exactly. So the other Dave, I think Plummer is his last name. He posted some clips of this interview. I think the full one just went up last weekend, and I haven't watched it. But like a lot of the clips he posted are like, one of them is about a bunch of the strife with OS2 and how poorly Microsoft and IBM people got along on that project. And
because you remember at that time Microsoft was looking at IBM as the old fuddy-duddies who were ruining everything, but also they had this enormous still big mainframe business at that point.
Yeah. And like I think the craziest one of those clips I saw was he talks about Xenix, which I had never heard of, which apparently was a Microsoft developed version of Unix at the time.
Yeah.
And that like quite literally they were trying to decide internally, what does our successor to DOS look like? And there were people advocating for Xenix or a Unix based approach, like a POSIX based approach.
Yeah.
And then Windows 3.1 blew up and sold like 16 million copies. And then Bill Gates was like, all right, we're going to do Windows. Like, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to make our own Windows platform and not do this Unix stuff. Like, it just,
the fact,
like, things could have gone so different. Because, like, like he basically said, like, every Windows up through 3.0 was a non starter. Like, nobody bought it. Nobody cared. Like,
there's a sequence of time. There's a sequence of events there that is, I don't know the cause and effect. I don't know that you can really look at them and say, hey, here's the cause and effect. But like the 286 came out and it was fast enough to make Windows 3.1 run really fast. And then the 386 came out and it was a much better Windows 3.1 experience. So it's funny. We bought two Wangs when I was in senior in high school, and one had Windows 3.0 and one had Windows 3.1. And I immediately just copied the Windows 3.1. I put Windows 3.1 on the 3.0 one because it was much better. But the 386s, like it felt like a Mac did in a lot of ways. Like it felt performant in the same way that like those old Mac classics had with the GUI.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, I got to make time to listen to that interview. It seems fair.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
Yes.
What's the channel again for people just in the interest of repeating it?
Let me just Google it.
Dave's Garage.
Like I said, I don't watch it religiously. Yes, Dave's Garage is the name of the channel.
I've started watching YouTube videos with my daughter lately, and as a result, my YouTube recommendations are like there's a lot of talking animals. Is all I'll say. We do have a lot of guinea pigs now, which is nice.
All right.
Yeah, and a lot of roller coaster like POVs.
That's good. Well, hey, let's pivot straight to this question from Costco Christmas Batter. What is the collective noun for guinea pigs?
Piggies?
Pigs is pretty popular on the internet these days, but I am partial to piggies.
Is there an official collective noun?
I don't think so. Well, cavies, I guess, like their actual, like their real name is cavie.
Herd.
Cavia porcellus, I think is the. Why do I know that?
No. That's their. But the collective noun is what the group of them is called. It's a herd.
Oh, yeah. Like, yes, they are. They are herd animals, but
herd animals. Capybaras, herds.
I will say the daily driver around here is piggies. I address them directly as piggies every day.
When we've pig sat for the school pigs, we call them peaks.
Yes, I'm not going to lie. A small but significant part of the novelty of getting guinea pigs was having pets that are called pigs.
I can see that,
even though they're not actually pigs.
We had pigs briefly when I was a kid. They were nice. I liked having pigs. Pig pigs,
like actual pigs.
They're very personable.
Pork pigs. Swine.
They were more eating pigs than working pigs. Yes. But we didn't do the eating business. It was everybody got too attached and it was a problem. So they just went away.
Finding out how intelligent pigs are recently in life has been kind of. I don't want to. Anyway, you beg to differ.
I was there when the bad business happened once, and it was. I'm good. Like I still like bacon, but it was a lot.
Huh.
Here's a fun fact: a group of ferrets is called a business.
We might have to end this podcast. I don't know if I can continue on after
Those ferrets
learning.
are giving you the business, Brad.
I don't know if I can continue on after learning that fact. Okay, good stuff. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and read this other one from Does It Compile Yet real quick, because it's one more little kind of retro computing thing.
That's a good name.
That is a pretty good name. Why is a wizard, as in new document wizard, called a wizard? My Gen X brain has some association of an animated wizard character in late 90s Windows, which Googling suggests was part of Microsoft Agent. but I can't figure out if that came before or after Microsoft started using the word in the context of new document and project creation. I looked this up, at least to the extent that Wikipedia documents it. It sounds like it is explicitly a Microsoft creation. But is there more?
We answered this question before wrongly, I believe.
God damn it.
No, it's okay. It's been doing this for a long time. It's gonna happen eventually. People called people who were good at computer stuff wizards.
Oh yes,
colloquially before the 90s and the 80s and even in the Unix days.
Oh, is that where Microsoft got the name from? That makes sense.
Yeah, I believe somebody even sent in a note that was like there was conversation about system administrators in Unix land being called wizards. But Microsoft took that and were like, hey, we can productize this idea. And then they made the wizards into the things that told you how to connect to the internet or how to connect a printer or whatever.
Yeah, the sort of that kind of flow, that left to right flow of clicking the next button and going through options seems to be a Microsoft invention. Although it sounds like Apple was using it around the same time in macOS 8. As
they called them doctors, I think, though, didn't they?
This says they were called assistants.
Yeah.
In macOS 8. Yeah, there you go. There are a small number of old Unix handbooks out there I may have mentioned before where like, that style of like 70s, 80s, like fantasy novel cover art, like that hand painted, really sort of like grand looking fantasy art. There are some Unix handbooks out there that straight up have like wizards doing a bunch of Unix shit with cauldrons and giant books and eldritch looking stuff that says sudo on it.
Wait, you say sudo, not sudo?
We've been through this before.
So the Hacker's Dictionary, according to the Stack Exchange post, the Hacker's Dictionary in 1982 defined a wizard as a noun, a person who knows how a complex piece of software or hardware works, someone who can find and fix his bugs in an emergency, rarely used at MIT, where hacker is the preferred term. Or 2, a person who is permitted to do things forbidden to ordinary people, e.g. a net wizard on a 10x may run programs which speak low-level host IMP protocol. An advent wizard at Sail may play adventure during the day. There you go.
All right.
And a guy in a 1982 Usenet post described himself as a system wizard, Al Chetam, from the Cume Corp in San Jose, California.
Last thing I'll mention, just because I'm very proud of it to this day, 15 years later, in the car one time, a long time ago, Ryan and Jeff were doing some bit of some kind of top 10 wizards bit. It was very much just one of those things where Ryan was just like top 10 wizards go.
Just doing a riff. Yeah.
Yes.
Doing a bit.
There was plenty of Orgo and shit like that in there. And then I said install shield. And
oh shit, I almost spit out my drink.
It was, I just threw it again.
That's a good wizard.
You can pat me on the head if you want, but it was one of the few times I've really made Ryan laugh very hard. I felt very proud.
Yeah. That would have broken him.
Anyway,
that would have broken him.
Yes. Okay. Here's an email from Seabird Song. The backstory. My son, 7 years old, fell asleep on a very short car trip Saturday morning, and he was super grumpy for the rest of the day, which struck us as odd. He was awake when we got out of bed at 6:30 and didn't remember when he woke up, but I realized I could figure it out using motion sensor data in Home Assistant's logbook. This showed that he left his room at 1 a.m. and proceeded to play Mario in the living room until dawn. Question: is it creepy to have detailed logs of movement for nearly every room in your house? It sort of feels like connecting my Hue and Ecobee stuff to Home Assistant accidentally created a panopticon.
So, okay. 7-year-old is under the panopticon age. It's okay. As long as you don't know. My rule on this is as the parent here is that if the children don't know that you're surveilling them, it's okay. That said, but the moment they realize that like something's watching them, you got to take the camera out. You're going to make them paranoid. We got rid of all the, I let all the batteries on the motion sensors in our house run out and haven't put batteries back in a long time ago because I was tired of having motion logs for every room in the house, for specifically this reason. Also, it may not have been your son playing Mario. It could have been the cat or the dog walking around triggering the motion sensors. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it depends on the sensor, but is it actually granular enough to tell you, like, here's the size of the entity moving around and things like that? Or
So the hardwired ones that have more power, that have full-time power connections generally are better than the battery operated ones. The battery operated ones are usually like, hey, is there any motion above a certain threshold? So you like the ones that I have a knob on the back that you turn to tune so that it doesn't detect your pets, but it does detect your people. My daughter wasn't big enough until she was like 4 to trigger the ones that to trigger it when it wouldn't pick up the dog. Also, your kid, it sounds cool if he was playing Mario from like 1 a.m. until 6:30. That's all. Like, I think like the takeaway from this is maybe when he gets up in the middle of the night and can't sleep, you should suggest that he comes in and wakes you up instead of going and playing Mario. But I mean, look, man, I've done that.
You know, I think it's probably possible this was not a response to being unable to sleep, that this was more a targeted effort to play more Mario, which I get.
I like that age kid though. It's like 1 a.m. My daughter wouldn't have exactly understood what 1 a.m. was when she was 7 though. I don't think.
Fair.
She would have just been like, oh, I'm up. It's time to go do something. Oh, mom and dad are asleep still. I'll go in the living room.
Yeah, fair.
And then she would have sat on her iPad for 5 hours.
Yes.
And also been very grumpy the next day.
Yeah.
That's amazing though.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. What is the use case for those motion sensors that you have, for example? Like is it just for security? Is there something else I'm missing?
No, so when the kiddo was little and we were carrying like a wet baby around all the time, they flip on the lights in the room when you walked in. So we turn on, like, you carry a wet baby out of the bathroom and into the bedroom, and you put them down, and you don't have to like fumble with the light switch or anything. It just turns on. But like now we're older, and also the response time on like my watch for Siri to turn on lights with Home Assistance, it's a direct connection now, is 10 to 50 milliseconds or something. So I just ask my watch to do it usually.
Yeah. Me too. How about, got a couple of screen questions here.
We got a lot of screen feedback after the episode last week talking about 40 hertz mode.
Yes. Okay. Here's a question from Julian Wheels about that subject. Will asked me to submit this question about 30 hertz gaming based on the discussion around 40 hertz mode. If you have a basic 60 hertz monitor without VRR, that's variable refresh rate, and you cannot run a game consistently at 60 FPS, is it better to lock it to 30 hertz to avoid screen tearing and other artifacts? Any other recommended settings under this situation?
So I realized as we were answering questions about this week in the Discord that we didn't explicitly say something. The 40 hertz mode works on most gaming monitors because you run them at 120 hertz. Either they have variable refresh rate and can run at any refresh rate from like a low number up to the maximum supported speed, or they run at a locked 120 hertz and then they just repeat each frame 3 times instead of 4.
Yeah, I think we touched on that a little bit, but maybe not super directly. The thing I had forgotten was that VRR is another way to do 40 hertz. I in my mind, like, you have to have a 120 hertz screen, but I think you mentioned at some point the Steam Deck does not have that, right?
Well, so the Steam Deck, it turns out, has a 60 hertz and a 40 hertz mode, and that's it. There's no variable refresh rate beyond those two.
Interesting.
And apparently that was one of their early specs, because when people have asked them why there's not an OLED version of the Steam Deck, it's specific. Like, they specifically said we couldn't find an OLED that did 60 hertz and 40 hertz.
Interesting. Okay. So I mean, the thing you're describing here, basically being on a 60 hertz monitor without VRR and not being able to consistently hit 60, that's the first 15 or 20 years of PC gaming for me. Like, that was the eternal struggle, right? It's all the glide days were 30 hertz to maybe 35. Yes, that was the problem for the first however many years of 3D rendering on PC. That was all you had, and so you constantly were making decisions around, like, basically, if you could hit 60 and over consistently, you would turn on VSync, because then you would get consistent 60 and never tear.
Yeah, but maybe a little bit of mouse lag.
But when you have VSync on at 60 and you drop to 30, or I'm sorry, when you have VSync on and you are at 60 and drop at all, not to 30, but like drop even like 2 frames, you're instantly down to 30, because it can only, when you're doing vertical sync, it can only draw to the monitor, like we said.
Except CRTs, which we were using in the 90s
Yes.
and early 2000s, you could set to whatever refresh rate you wanted between like 30 and 60 hertz.
Yeah.
So they were, but also nobody cared about this shit back then.
Yeah.
Is the other thing.
Or we didn't know that it could be better. You know, like there was nothing on the market. You just put up with it because there was nothing out there that alleviated this. That was kind of the big hubbub around G-Sync when NVIDIA first rolled that out, and then FreeSync came along as an open standard. You know, now it's in the HDMI
and VRR.
HDMI VRR is another version of that. Like that was the whole hubbub, was like, hey, now it doesn't matter if your game's performance is going up and down based on complexity, because the screen will just sync to whatever the game's putting out.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. So it took us 20 years of bad LCD panels to realize that we could do better, basically.
Yeah. Yes.
But so the other option for the 60 hertz folks is something. What do you call it?
Triple buffering? Is that what you're trying to think of?
No. Oh, on the triple buffering definitely increases mouse lag. You don't want to do triple buffering with games.
Like when you turn it on in the NVIDIA control panel, it's straight up says like there will be more latency with this.
Yeah, and it's not. It doesn't feel good. It often feels like you're like playing games through soup when you're playing with a mouse and keyboard. Oh God, what are the people that do the visual comparisons?
Digital Foundry.
Digital Foundry did a thing last year with Forza Horizon, the Forza Horizon game that came out last year, or the year before, where they compared 60 hertz locked to 30 hertz with motion blur and everything turned up higher. They were like, the 30 hertz with motion blur looks better and is indistinguishable from the 60 hertz, which got them a lot of really angry letters.
I don't know.
Yeah, I know. That's what everybody said. And then I tried it and I was like, oh yeah, okay, I can't tell a difference here. Also, I have a computer that can run it at like 200 frames a second with everything turned on. So I turned motion blur off immediately. But the big takeaway from this whole thing is I realized I have like 3 basic modes for games that I play. I'm playing a first person game that is a multiplayer game like Fortnite or PUBG or a shooter of some kind where frames matter. And then that mode is frame rate at all cost, right? As more frames wins games. It's a NVIDIA marketing line, but they're probably right. The second mode is I'm playing a single player thing that has a bunch of ray tracing and all sorts of stuff that's going to make the performance really bad. And I want that to look really good. So I run that at like 30 to 60 frames per second, depending on what the machine will run, with everything turned all the way up. And I'm stoked about that. Now the in between are the games that are like kind of pretty good, like high quality graphics, requires some performance, maybe not like a Hades or a Dead Cells, but like a tier up. Ghost Runner is a good example of this, right? It's like a game that requires some Twitch input matters. Fighting games fit in this category for me a lot of times because I'm not very good at them. Where you're locked to 60 hertz on Mortal Kombat or whatever because of the way the fighting stuff works, but you can turn some stuff up, but you also don't, you're not going to go completely ham on ray tracing, whatever nonsense they have, and like for me, all games slot into one of those 3 spots, either extreme performance, extreme graphics, or kind of middle of the road. And the middle, the extreme on either side are both pretty easy, but the middle of the road is really complicated. And often like GeForce Experience or the AMD tool that sets your game settings for whatever hardware you have generally gives you a pretty good place to start with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, not to get back into it, I think that's what was leading to some of the strife around Alan Wake is like, I mean, they said flat out, like, hey, we conceive this as a 30 frames per second experience. This is story driven. The gameplay is fairly slow and methodical. So, but then people that play games on PCs saw like, a 3060 is only going to get you 30 FPS at whatever on medium or whatever. And like kind of lost their minds when like, hey, that's what console players are getting. Like, that's the intended experience here.
I'm going to say, more frame rate is not always better. Like that, like this is a controversial take. I make games. I have to deal with people coming into the Discord and being like, hey man, I'm only getting 120 frames a second on my 3-year-old video card at ultra settings. What am I doing wrong? This is not acceptable performance for this machine. I'm like, you need to disengage your feelings of self-worth from the hardware in your computer and just enjoy the game.
That very much is kind of the read I'm getting on some of the anger out there, is that people think they refuse to debase themselves by playing on medium. But like, I feel like that's like a whole other conversation. Is that like what constitutes a good looking graphics preset on PC has moved up so much, or I guess moved down actually is what I should say. Like like low and medium PC games look pretty damn good these days. You know?
Well, the thing that's happened is nobody can ship a mode that will look good in 2 generations, because people get the game and they put it on that mode and they're like, shit, this is only running 3 frames a second. This game's going to get a bad review. So nobody, like the thing that Crysis did where they were like, okay, we have 2 modes here that are explicitly designed for next generation and next generation hardware. You literally can't do, because it will tank your game. Like from a commercial sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just get something. Ultra is designed to run on bog standard ass hardware for most games. And we're hitting a wall, partly because the pandemic slowed people's upgrade cycles and availability of GPUs for a long time. And partly because the consoles are actually reasonably capable now, that like if you want to run something that's designed to run on an Xbox Series X, you need a machine that's relatively beefy, because they have bottlenecks in different places and the PC has to brute force through that stuff. So like, you know, your direct storage and all that, like most people don't have that stuff, and shit's going to be weird as a result of it. So you have to have a lot more video card than you would have to otherwise in a lot of cases.
Yeah. I mean, it was always after the last generation was so long, it was always going to be bumpy when we finally made the shift, right, to games exclusive to the new machines being ported to PC.
But just to be clear, anytime somebody comes in and is like, "Oh, I'm getting I'm not getting more than 60 frames per second in a game, and it's not like a competitive esports game," I assume that they're a crank.
It's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Cue the angry Kotaku story.
Yeah. All right. One more question from Xander here in this vein before we move on. So I'm about to build a new PC. Hopefully by the next Q&A, I'll be done. I'm moving from an NVIDIA 1080 to a 4080 and now have a dilemma. Do I primarily use my 27-inch 144 hertz 1440p display or my 30-inch 4K 60 hertz display for playing, quote, pretty games? Is better frame rate more enjoyable than more pixels?
Okay, so when I built my desk, I had this problem because I have a 1080p 360 hertz display that I play competitive games on, and I have a 4K 60 hertz display that is it doesn't support HDR. So I would play the pretty games on whichever display supports HDR. Probably is the first answer to the question.
Owning a good screen that does good HDR now for the last like almost month or so now, like 100,000% you should play the games on whatever has good HDR, because that is by far in years the most profound, like visible improvement to presentation I have seen.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is that if you're running like super sampling to increase the density per pixel, like the number of pixels that are used to render each pixel on the screen, you probably get exactly the same image quality from a 1440p display and a 4K display without having to render 30% of the frames or whatever. I can't remember what the pixel difference is between 1440p and 4K, but it's a lot. So your room will be less hot if you play games on the 1440p display.
Yeah.
But so when I did the desk, I set it up with the up and down monitor. So the 4K ones on top and the 1080p ones on the bottom, and I can flip them. I could theoretically, if I wanted to do it and make my cables a giant nightmare, I can flip the like rotate the monitors 180 degrees. I've done it twice because it's a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And the 1080p monitor is fine, it turns out.
Yeah. I'm not going to say I've been 100% 4K pilled, but I am definitely starting to lean more toward resolution being more important, like eliminating shimmer in high frequency detail, like getting a much cleaner, more stable image is actually pretty nice once you see it.
Well, but if you're internally rendering the game at 4K on your 1440 display and then sampling down to 1440, it's the same. Your shimmers, you're going to reduce the shimmer the same way.
To be clear, I'm including 1440 and high resolution there.
Oh,
above 1080 basically.
Yeah,
but also like modern upscaling and reconstruction techniques are getting extremely good.
Yeah, I'm probably at some point in the not terribly distant future, I'm probably going to replace the 1080p 360 display with a 1440 360, just because it would be nice to have more pixels, mainly for desktop use. Yeah,
that was kind of something people were upset about in these specs. Is Remedy was quoting DLSS numbers. They were basically saying like, hey, on a 3070, I'm trying to remember from memory here. I think it was on a 3070, you get 60 FPS at 1080p with DLSS.
Yeah,
performance mode or balance mode rather.
Yeah.
Which led to a bunch of people running around screaming like, oh, my card can only run this at 540p. It's like maybe in the like early days of checkerboard rendering, you might have had an argument there. But like when you're quoting the internal rendering resolution, when DLSS is as good at upscaling the image as it is. Like, I don't know that that's like
540p feels like a low end for DLSS to do the thing that it does, though.
Well, that is like, the math there. Like balanced is I'd have to double.
It's 540 to 1080.
I think balanced is exactly 50% of output resolution.
Oof.
But the point is, though, you're not looking at 540p. You're looking at 1080p. Like,
yeah, it's just half of the pixels are made up.
Like the side by side comparisons being what they are. Like, I don't know that I can say DLSS 1080p is really worse than native at this point.
Yeah, it's definitely better than native with no AA, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know, that kind of like, look, there's a lot of weird drama that happens in PC gaming spaces because the Reddits around those places are really toxic. So
yeah. Sorry, did not mean to devote this much of the show to that topic, but I've been seeing a lot of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Here is a more conceptual screen related question from Roland Stazak. If the primary colors that make up all colors are red, yellow, and blue, I'm going to grant his if there because I didn't know that, but I'll take that as true. If the primary colors that make up all colors are red, yellow, and blue, why does display technology rely on red, green, and blue? Why isn't it RYB instead of RGB?
I'm going to asterisk this because I'm not an expert, but I did some reading.
Okay.
The most common answer to this question on the internet, and the thing that I initially thought when I saw the question, is monitors are emissive, so they're additive color. You're taking three light sources and theoretically taking three light sources, 3 subpixels, and combining them to produce the combination of those two colors. When you talk about RYB, you're not really talking about RYB. You're talking about CMYK, really, in a modern sense. You're talking about subtractive color, which is reflections. So the dyes are absorbing colors at certain frequencies, which result in the other colors being reflected back to you.
Got it.
Which is why, like, your color wheel on paper is red, yellow, and blue, and your color wheel with the light is red, green, and
Interesting.
blue.
Like, I guess basically what you're saying is like print on paper absorbs light, whereas your monitor is putting out light.
Is yes, exactly.
Huh.
And so the color wheel for reflective, for additive and subtractive color is, or generative and reflected color is different.
Yeah. Let's lighten it up here.
Also, Sharp did TVs with Y pixels a few years ago.
Did they?
And literally nobody liked them because they looked weird.
Interesting.
There's also a lot of theory about the RGB being because of the sensitivity of your eye to certain color wavelengths, but it turns out that's not the case, because if that was the case, you would actually probably do yellow, green, and blue, but then we wouldn't be able to have reds on our displays. And a world without red what would all the little circles that have the big numbers next to them, what color would they be? Purple?
Yeah, what color would we use for that?
Madness.
What would be the stop color in a world without red? I cannot tell you. Let's lighten it up here a little bit. Phantom 86. If you were a fruit, what fruit would you be? My 5-year-old has loved this question for years.
Oh, man.
I don't know why the two fruits that come together. The first thing that came to mind was a kumquat, and I don't even know what a kumquat is. I just think it's a funny name.
So it's a little citrus, isn't it?
Is it?
I think
yes.
so.
As a matter of fact, it looks like a tiny citrus fruit of some kind. The other one that came to mind is a kiwi fruit, because being a fuzzy fruit would be pretty fun.
Dude, I would like being fuzzy. You could be a peach too, though.
Peaches are fuzzy.
I like peaches a lot, man. What fruit would I be? Am I sour? I might be sour. I don't know if I'm sour or not. I don't know what fruit I would be. I'm always bad at these. Like, wow. I think, okay. So like, I don't think I'm a banana because I'm not soft. I am mushy, but I'm not that soft, and I'm not green ever. So I'm out there. I really like apples a lot. I do bruise easily.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have a thin skin. Actually, that's not true. My skin's pretty thick. I don't know if I have seeds inside. I've never looked, but probably. Why not?
This is getting exhaustively analytical.
Huh. I'm going to go with apple. Specifically, maybe either a Honeycrisp or a Fuji.
Okay. Those
crisp,
are the good,
a little tart.
I would say those are probably the good apples. I mean, there are other good apples, but I think
Cortlands are nice.
Fuji, I guess Fuji's probably our default apple around here.
If I'm eating, it's a Fuji or a Honeycrisp usually.
Yeah.
If I'm baking, it's a Cortland or a Macintosh with some Granny Smiths to add some structure.
Favorite basic apple preparation, like not just picking it up and biting it, and
pie,
but also not making a pie. I mean, like just kind of a more in between. Like I'm not just going to pick this apple up and eat it around the core, but like I'm going to spend say less than 5 minutes turning this into something.
Did you ever do the thing where you knocked out most of the core and then filled the hole with brown sugar and cinnamon and then wrapped it in foil and put it in a campfire?
No, but I've been doing that with peanut butter. Well, not the campfire part, but I've been coring an apple and filling that with peanut butter recently.
I like slices with peanut butter on them.
Yeah,
although they're sometimes slidey as the peanut butter slides off.
Yes, it does.
There's probably a technique to make that better. I love a fried apple.
Okay. Ooh. Oh, wait, like a glaze, not a glaze, but I mean like
you saute them, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, put a little baking powder on the outside so they brown up.
Yes. Also very good.
Yeah.
What's your peanut butter preference, since I'm just randomly asking questions about food?
I live in a creamy house, but I'm a crunchy peanut butter. I like unsweetened, it turns out.
Yes. I've become a purist.
I pretty much just grind it up yourself.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that. Actually, I guess that would be possible. But yes, I try to buy peanut butter that says one ingredient, which is peanuts and nothing else.
Yeah, I don't like having to stir up the grease though.
Oh, I think we just talked about this, didn't we?
Maybe like 3 years ago. It's been a while.
Started to mention my favorite brand, and I think jogging some memories here.
So we switched to Jif Natural when the kiddo was born because we go through a lot more peanut butter now, and the stuff we used before was too expensive, and we got tired. Like literally, both of us got tired of stirring up the oil into it.
Mm-hmm. Have I told you the trick? Turn the jar upside down.
Yeah, but then you just have the oil on the bottom of the jar, right?
Well, so if you really want to be hardcore about this, you preload. Like you try to anticipate when you're going to need to open the next jar of peanut butter.
Yeah.
And then invert it once a day for like 3 or 4 days before you open it and stir it.
That's insanity, Brad.
What? Every time I'm in the kitchen.
How much free time do you have? Holy shit.
Yes. The 2 seconds it takes to notice the upside down peanut butter jar and turn it over.
Did you, is one of you the designated peanut butter flipper, or do you like flip and then reflip?
It's me. And I am also the designated initial stirrer, which is like, I'm going to tell you, it is significantly easier if you do that at least a couple days in advance. Like for what I guess it must help infuse some of the peanut butter, the oil into the peanut butter. Yeah,
probably. Look, what do you do with yogurt when you get it? When you open a tub of yogurt and you've got the liquid in there that's sitting on top of the
whole thing.
I caught my daughter the other day pouring that. I was like, "What the hell are you doing?
What are you doing?
That's all the good stuff. It's the whey."
Yeah, the whey. That's the name for that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's bring this home and then we'll move on to something else.
Okay.
Have you ever
serious talks?
I'm sure you're familiar with the. I think it's mostly Sabra is the big brand of hummus, but I'm sure others do this as well, where they'll sell roasted garlic and pine nut hummus, but it's actually just a giant tub of their regular hummus with all of these goodies, the pine nuts and the garlic and stuff.
Yeah, we get the roasted red pepper one all the time,
right on the top.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen someone open one of those things and then basically proceed to dip out all of the good stuff on 3 crackers?
That person should be fired into the sun
right away.
That's you know who else I think would do that is Tucker Carlson.
That sounds about right. I witnessed a family member who will go nameless.
That is a war crime.
And take most of the good stuff in the giant tub of hummus in the space of 2 minutes.
Holy shit! I would. That person would be out of the family.
Oh man.
I mean, I thought you were going to say that they stirred it up into the whole thing so it was evenly distributed. Because you want a little bit of a.
That's what I do. I mean,
I like a little unevenness to my distribution of chunks.
I get it. To me, it seems like the only egalitarian way to do it, though, is to make it totally diffused through the hummus so everybody gets some.
I mean, I feel like the person who comes last to the hummus is always going to get screwed.
Yeah,
but that's fair because they were late.
Yes, but the person that just takes all the goodies.
That is.
I bet that's a damn good cracker, though. I hope you're happy.
But that's like the equivalent of just eating the skin, like going to KFC and getting a bucket of skin. I'm so upset, Brad.
Yeah, I hear it.
I'm angry for you. If you named and shamed this person, I would not blame you, just to be clear.
I shouldn't.
Okay.
They know who they are. Let's see. Jack W 2610 asks, as we move into the soup season, I have an important soup related question. Is there any fundamental difference between soup and baby food?
This person, like, look, also, I don't want to, we value all listeners, blah, blah, blah. Look, soup is delicious. And just because you've never had good soup and good soup has never touched your life or your heart doesn't mean that all soup is baby food.
Also, what's wrong with baby food?
Propaganda.
I've never eaten baby food, but I could see. I could see
had baby food.
Well, I mean, as a child. I mean, as an adult.
You don't keep a pack of prunes around just in case?
No.
You get things going again?
But now that I sit here and think about, like, man, what if you just had a puree of something in a cup and you could just eat it in 30 seconds?
Look, I'm going to blow your mind. You know how when we were babies, they used to feed us baby food in little jars? Mm-hmm. Now the baby food comes in like those packs with a sucker thing on the end.
What?
Yeah, so like you can get applesauce, you can get prunes, you can get all that stuff, just sweet potatoes and goo.
Okay, $1 billion business idea here, adult baby food.
Let me introduce you to a thing called Soylent, Brad.
Oh no.
I think they're still around. I don't know.
Oh boy. All right.
Yeah. Baby food is delicious. Making your own baby food is really easy.
Sure, I can see
for certain values of really easy, also delicious, and soups are very good. I have a gnocchi beef soup that we make all winter long that is delish and has chunks and would choke an average baby because the gnocchi are a choking hazard. So suck it, babies.
Choky gnocchi.
Choking. Oh boy, I know what the title is this week.
Yes, I don't eat a lot of canned soup anymore because it's kind of a giant sodium bomb.
Yeah,
but when we were keeping canned soup around a lot, if you let it sit long enough and then open it, it will have the consistency of baby food.
Yeah.
I found. Get it coming out in the canned shape.
What's your favorite canned soup flavor?
Oh, we were getting a lot of Progresso just because it went on sale a lot. Gosh.
You got like a chowder, you want like a beef and barley, you want your tomato.
Clam chowder.
New England or Manhattan?
New England, absolutely. There is no such thing as Manhattan clam chowder.
This is just tomato soup with bad chunks.
That's right. Split pea and ham.
Yeah. Okay. I've never had a split pea soup. I don't think.
I'll take any variety of chicken noodle or like a beef stew kind of thing or whatever. Yeah. Honestly, I'll eat just about any soup.
But delicious.
That goes for most categories of food, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I ate jellyfish once.
I ate jellyfish.
Yeah.
Salad?
Jellyfish salad?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just
mine was served like a salad.
I think it was just a big heap of jellyfish.
This was served like a wakame salad with like a vinegary. It wasn't. I'm glad I tried it. I'm not going back again.
Yeah. Kind of with you there.
Yeah.
Let's see here. You flagged this email from Pac-Man 326. I'll try to come up with an answer. I learn new things all the time as I have gotten older. For example, I did not realize up until a few months ago that the periodic table has been completed for some time. What's something you learned recently that you were surprised you did not know about sooner?
I just wanted to talk about this periodic table being completed for some time thing because I didn't actually think that. I think that there's still like do you know how much do you know about the periodic table? It's a cool thing, right?
It is a very neat, methodical thing. Like, it's arranged it's arranged in ascending numbers of electron.
Yeah, but also each row indicates the number of electron. It represents a shell, which can hold X number of electrons, and each element is there. So, like, if there were gaps in the periodic table before, they predicted the absence of a element that we then discovered or synthesized in some cases.
And aren't the columns also representative of certain categories? Like the noble gases are a column, I think.
So let's see, it predicts characteristics of the elements both horizontally, vertically, and diagonally.
Oh wow, I didn't know about diagonal.
So the interesting thing about this is for the current rows, it's full. And we've synthesized everything, even in like the big heavy stuff down at the bottom. I think maybe a couple of things that like we haven't characterized fully yet.
Yeah, my understanding is like the last elements on the table kind of like have only ever existed for like fractions of a second in a lab.
Nanoseconds in some cases. Yeah, they break down immediately into smaller molecules, smaller atoms. But My understanding is that there's conceptually more rows that we can tack on at the bottom. We just have to we don't have the high enough energy things to create those or measure their existence. So anyway, that's what I got.
Periodic table's cool.
Periodic table's cool.
I will say, I mean, maybe this is an add-on for this question. Like, I understood most of what we were talking about just now conceptually, especially like the, ascending numbers of electrons and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The place where it went into practice for me in a way that blew my fucking mind was the first time I read how stellar nucleosynthesis works, which is how hydrogen is fused into heavier elements inside stars.
Uh-huh.
And quite literally, you just go up the periodic table. Like, that's all it is. Like, 2 hydrogen atoms fuse into helium because that's the next one up. And then 2 helium atoms fuse into carbon third.
No, 2 heliums would be whatever 4 is.
I can't remember, but anyway, like you just walk up
like
the periodic
lithium
table
or something.
Yeah, I'd have to look. I mean, I don't know the actual table that well, but like it basically just realizing that this table we have constructed is a roadmap for how that works physically.
Well, but it's also interesting because like the design of the table indicates the represents both the internal construction and that through some like that also shows because the outer shell the electron shell configurations for the outer shells predict behaviors. It means that it also predicts the behaviors. Like all of the things in the far right column are noble gases, and all the ones what left of that are super, super reactive and really caustic and gnarly because they desperately need more electrons. And it's fun.
The last thing I'll say, the cool thing about that as you go up the table inside stars, the only reason stars don't collapse in on themselves under the force of their own gravity, which eventually happens, which is how they all die, right?
Yeah.
Is because the inward crush of gravity is held at bay, like literally reaches equilibrium with the outward release of energy
from fusion reaction
from the fusion until you get to iron on the table. Yeah. And then iron takes more energy to fuse than it releases. And that's when everything goes to shit.
So there's a Charlie Strauss book that he wrote in like the early 2000s called Iron Sunrise. That's about a spacefaring species that figures out how to just put a giant wad of iron in the middle of mainline stars that aren't ready to explode and just wipes out civilizations it doesn't like.
Okay.
It's pretty good.
Interesting.
But also like the side effect of all that is that everything that's bigger than hydrogen in the universe presumably came from exploding stars.
Yes.
This is a Carl Sagan thing that he blew people's minds with in the 70s.
Yeah.
But
and then a lot of the much heavier elements, I think there are much more exotic processes that happen in like supernovas and stuff like that.
Yeah. There's all sorts of crazy stuff.
Anyway, that
science is cool, man.
Yes. Learn maybe that's my answer to this question. Learning about basic elements of the universe.
Honestly, the one that blew my mind, I think about it a lot, is that the 60 hertz, like the fact that every TV in North America is tuned for 60 hertz and thus the world is because of the speed at which the generator spun on some thing in New England in the 1800s is the one that blows my mind.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Another Costco Christmas batter. That's cake batter. Question.
Oh, I assumed.
Have you bought a Raspberry Pi 5 yet?
No.
I have not either.
They were selling them at Maker Faire. I should have grabbed one.
Wait, like had them there?
I think you could like give them money and then they would send you one when they were available.
So I think they just actually started shipping in the last like 48 hours to pre-orders, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think I'm going to rush out and get one. It's definitely better, but
I kind of like I have a 4 extra now. And I have a bunch of 3s that aren't being used. So
yeah, I ended up with an 8 gigabyte 4 during the pandemic because it was the only one I could find in stock. And that runs everything I need to run on it comfortably. The new one, like it's way more compute at less power. I guess the USB 3 bus is faster. It's got PCI Express now, which is cool.
Is there like a header for it?
Yeah, you still need a hat to like use an NVMe drive or something like that. Also, it's only cool, it's only PCI Express 2.0.
But being able to use an NVMe drive instead of like USB storage or SD card is a big improvement.
Yes. There have been add-ons for the 4 that let you use a SATA M.2 drive as a boot drive, but you being able
SATA M.2 is hard to find though too.
Yeah, those are
these days.
And everything is NVMe now, so like it is better, but I don't have a serious use case. It's also got way better graphics, and actually, kind of this follows on from last week, talking about like Steam Link apps and stuff like that. Feels like a Pi might be a good basis for some kind of set-top box, like streaming games to a thing.
I can see that
kind of thing. for as cheap as they are.
That makes sense.
Yeah, the Pi 5.
How much is the Pi 5? Is like $80 or something?
Same price. They may only be selling.
Are they only selling one SKU so far or something?
I think they only have 4 and 8 right now from what I saw.
Okay.
I could be wrong about that.
That's RAM configurations, I assume, right?
Yes. I don't know if they're still doing 2 gigabytes or not. Yes, it is only 4 and 8 right now. And I think it's 60 and 80, I believe, for those two.
Okay.
So the price is going up a bit.
While we're talking about Pis, NCal14 asked which CM4 is recommended for Home Assistant Yellow. Should I go with a 4 gig or 8 gig model? I'm running a 4 gig with WireGuard and a bunch of other stuff on it, and it's fine. At some point, I'll probably swap it to a 16 gig or an 8 gig, just when they're more readily available. But like you can, it's a relatively easy update.
Yeah, I think Home Assistant, I mean, my Home Assistant config is not that complex, but it should do just fine with 4 gig.
If you install a lot of plugins or add-ons from the store, you can get in trouble because they're all Docker containers.
Yeah,
but
I can see that. Let's see. Spooky Actual. I was going to do a PC upgrade as the 2020 lockdown started and those plans got derailed. Now I am still on a 2014 era Core i5, and I'm starting to figure out what my next PC is going to be. And the recent episode about Intel's new stuff has me wondering if I should wait a bit longer. Do I get the latest stuff? Do I get the best of the last generation? Is waiting for the second generation of the new architecture the right move? I'm going to say, based on my recent experience, absolutely, unequivocally, yes.
I think
don't early adopt.
I think AMD's move to chiplets was really challenging for people who adopted early.
Yes, it sounds like first.
I think 14th gen Intel is a good place to be. I'm happy I'm on 13th gen.
Yeah.
I would not want to buy the first brand new chips for my primary machine.
Yeah. Ironically, the CPU end of the AMD platform I'm on seems to have basically been fine. I can't prove this, but it feels like much more chipset issues around IO and networking and stuff like that. Like the actual, like all the heterogeneous core stuff seems to work fine. Basically, it's really other parts of the system that are causing issues, and that's just a chipset platform BIOS driver thing.
I also, it's worth saying, I think that if you're looking at a laptop and you're buying the chipset stuff, the chiplet stuff, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think if you're looking at doing a high-end performance PC, better to, like, you're going to have a machine that uses more power if you buy something today than you will probably when the Tile chips come out next year or the year after. But also there's no timeline on the Tile chipsets for desktops right now. It's not like that's going to be next year's CPUs.
The last I saw, it looks like Arrow Lake probably will be the late next year Intel. So Meteor Lake is not getting a desktop part, but it sounds like Arrow will be both. So
yeah, but I mean, they just rolled out the 14th gen desktop parts last 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah. So it should, last roadmap I saw looks like a year from now is going to be the first desktop Tile part, but I wouldn't buy that. You couldn't pay me to get that either. Like
that's the one you should not buy for sure.
Against Intel, but that's their first move to this disaggregated architecture, I believe, is the industry term.
The technical term, yeah. But like also like look at you have a 9-year-old computer at this point, right? Like a 2014 Core i5 is a pretty slow computer at this point. You're going to start, like, you're into the time now when your CPU and memory and stuff are going to start dying, and replacing 2014 era memory is going to be really expensive compared to buying current memory that's fast and will carry you forward.
Yeah, so the good news is there's a huge range of modest or like reasonably priced, more mature options out there. Like you don't have to buy, like the new i7 is pretty reasonably priced and like kind of punches above its weight from the sound of things. Even the last gen AMD stuff is pretty much in a good spot now. Like you could build like a 5800X 3D machine for very little money that will like completely destroy what you have right now.
I was going to say that's the other thing is, like, if you don't want a giant hot 13900K or 1400K, you can just buy the cheap machine. Like buy the cheaper CPU, and it's the same architecture, more than enough cores that just doesn't generate a space heater's worth of heat when it's running full bore.
Yeah. I think the troublesome new gen stuff is memory chips or CPU sockets, brand new chipsets. Like
Intel is typically pretty good with new CPU sockets and chipsets. AMD is typically bad with chipsets
because Intel used to put one out like every year or two.
Yeah,
they had to get good at new sockets.
Like the fact that 12th series, 13th series, and 14th series all works in the same chipset in the same socket is super unusual for Intel.
That is an aberration for their normal way of doing things. Although who knows, maybe AMD is going to force them to be more competitive on that front.
They haven't for the last 20 years.
Fair. But it's really like moving to new chipset, new memory standard, stuff like that I am going to avoid from now on.
Yeah. Just like my rule on new memory is that it'll be fine. Just plan to replace the memory sooner than you would otherwise. The new CPU, and for like when Intel moved to Nehalem, Nehalem was pretty good for a brand new architecture. But they also had done the thing before with that where they moved did mobile first and servers, I think first too. I can't remember.
Yeah. I think there's honestly even some utility in waiting till the end of the thing, kind of close to the end of the generation of the thing you do want to buy, because like you see so many revised motherboard models out there these days, motherboard makers, you go to their sites and they'll have like the specs up for like, here's revision 1.0 of this motherboard, 1.1, sometimes a 2.0. So but even waiting for the kinks to get worked out on the existing boards is not the worst idea.
But Spooky Actual is on a 10-year-old computer at this point.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Again, I mean, I would say like Zen 3, the last gen AMD, or the 14th, like mid-range 14th gen both should be pretty solid.
Yeah. If this conversation was about a fight, like a 2018 era, 2080 or something situation, it would be a different conversation.
Yes.
Like an i9 9900, 9700, 9800, whatever.
Yeah.
But a 10-year-old PC, you're in the danger zone there.
Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of people out there having no problems with current gen, the new AMD stuff, to be clear. Like there's plenty of people running 7800 X3Ds that are having them work just fine. I'm just not one of them.
I just highlighted a post, but I didn't mean to read that. I was just idly highlighting for the record.
No, I know your Google Docs language at this point.
Yeah.
All right. Should we do like one more here?
Yeah, one more sounds good. We have overage that's mostly that's almost all from the Discord. So maybe we'll do extras for the Tech Pod for the Discord.
Yes.
Patron exclusive episode this month.
Double Taco. It's a good username.
Not one, but 2 tacos.
One for each fist.
When you go to Taco Bell, how many tacos do you get, Brad?
It's been so long since I've been to Taco Bell. I could not tell you what my last order was.
I'm so sorry.
In high school, it was 2 double-decker tacos.
Oh man, double-decker taco. They don't make those anymore.
Do they not make those anymore?
No, it's single-decker only these days.
What if you showed up with your own soft tortilla and refried beans and just made your own?
The double-decker option is the cheesy gordita crunch, which is like the soft thing with some. There's some goo between that and the hard shell, and then there's normal taco.
I see. Double Taco asks, in the age of never-ending reboots and remakes, what's one thing in tech you'd like a remake of? For me, every time I open up my Fractal Node 804 case to tinker, I wish it had gotten a modern refresh from the old design of 2008.
Oh man. So I'm usually an upgrade case guy every 10 years. Going from my old my old Corsair Silent mid towers to the Fractal Meshify Compact, I was blown away by how much nicer modern cases are.
Yeah.
I would love to have a redo of like my old Sony Trinitron 24-inch monitor that I gave away because it was too heavy to keep.
Sure.
A dumbass also.
My CRTs are nice. I don't know if they're worth the trade-offs. I get it.
I couldn't put it on my desk. I don't know how I would use it, but I would love to have one.
Man, this is a tough question. I'm trying to
because the nostalgia thing is a tough question, right? Because it's like you have nostalgia for it, but it probably wasn't very good by modern standards.
That's exactly why I'm struggling with this question, because like setting aside my sentimentality about stuff I grew up with, like everything now is objectively pretty much better than it used to be. So, I
mean, the CRT is interesting. Like, that's why I like the CRT, is because the CRT.
Yeah, that's something you can't get anymore.
And also, I think it was actually like in a lot of ways, use more power is heavier, more inconvenient, whatever. Picture quality, pretty remarkable.
Oh yeah. No. Like I think no, but in fact, like you can go, there's a bunch of YouTube, there's a whole YouTube subculture of people doing modern gaming on CRTs these days.
Yeah.
Because they do in some ways still look better than anything out there.
Yeah.
Man, I'm just like trying to cycle through in my head like old graphics cards I've had or like anything that I'd want to bring back. But
I'd love a mechanical version of the Microsoft Natural Keyboard Pro or maybe the Ergo 4000.
Okay. Yes, like that's a good example.
Like mechanical like switches on that. That would be cool.
Sure. I don't know.
A Microsoft IntelliMouse Explorer 3.0 shaped mouse with like the innards of a modern G Pro X wireless or whatever in there.
Can I just say a next cube?
Oh man, like what would you put in a modern Next Cube?
I don't know. I have no idea. You should go look up a video of the innards of an Next Cube at some point. Like so. Like you've heard the stories about like the early day, like Steve Jobs' legendary asshole, right? Like
yeah,
like the not just how hard he was on people on like the Macintosh team and stuff, but like his demands that like the circuit board be designed and laid out in very elegant ways. So that level of fiddly detail, attention to detail, apparently reached its apex with the design of the next computers. Like it kind of sunk the company.
Because that was
so insistent on everything in those machines being as beautiful and elegant and made out of the most expensive materials possible that it pretty much ruined their chances of succeeding in the market.
Ate their margin.
But also like the people who did buy them basically swear that they were the best computers ever made.
Yeah, I have some friends who have them. I bought a Power Mac G4. The one with the fold down side, like they were the white and gray plastic ones with the circle flip latch on the side that folded down, and the motherboard was on the door. So when you opened it, it was really easy to work on.
Yes.
The problem with them was they were chirally opposite PC hardware. Because my initial thought was, I'm going to just put a PC board in there and then I'll have a PC. But I then would have had to rework the entire back plane of the computer because let's see, the Mac was designed, the PC, the motherboard is always designed to be on the right side of the case if you're looking at the front. And on the Mac, it was designed to be on the left side of the case. So it flips down the other side, which meant that then all of the backplane stuff and the slot covers and all that were in the wrong place. You would have had to cut the whole thing out, flip it around or rotate it 180 degrees and then solder it back, weld it back into place. So I never actually did it, but I wish somebody would do like I wish somebody would do a version of that case where the motherboard just folds down. I think that would be dope.
Sure.
Doesn't have to look like the outside. I don't give a shit what it looks like. I'm just saying the part where you have that would be cool.
You've got me thinking about PC builds and cases and stuff. I'm just going to throw this out here as a potential episode topic. People can let us know. Should we do an episode on ATX, like what the ATX spec is and where it now falls short? Like that's a pretty common topic on the Discord, like where it falls short.
And what that means because
ATX is like a almost 30-year-old standard at this point and just shows no signs of going away. Like Intel tried to replace it once with, was it BTX?
BTX,
I think was the name.
Because B is one letter higher than A.
Yes, exactly.
We did a cover story on it. When was the ATX spec last updated?
Last updated, I think it was rolled out in 95, but I don't remember.
Oh, ATX 3.0 was February of 2022.
Oh, okay. So there's still
that adds because ATX spec also includes the power supply stuff.
Right.
I'm totally down for an ATX spec episode. That would be fun.
Like
the ones before that were AT standard. It was much harder to build computers in AT standard cases.
Yeah, I can't remember. I never did. My first build was 97, so I think I missed AT.
There was no backplane. So you had to, like, your case had to have the right holes in it for the ports on the back of the motherboard, which usually meant you had the equivalent of like extra USB header cards. And you'd have like a motherboard thing that would go and then screw into two screws on the side for like the keyboard connector and stuff like that.
I think I understood that AT power connectors were also real easy to get on wrong and do bad things.
I feel like that's probably true. I never took an AT computer apart, I don't think.
But Brad, You're talking about ATX 3.0, like the power supply stuff with the 12 volt, the 12
volt rail,
the 12 pin GPU power and all that stuff. Yes. Of course.
I have something really exciting to tell you about the Wikipedia article on the ATX spec.
Go on.
Under variants, there's a Wikipedia note that says This section's factual accuracy is disputed. Relevant discussion may be found on talk:/ATX. Please help to ensure that the disputed statements are reliably sourced.
Wait,
scene drama.
Should we just do the episode about whatever controversy is happening in the Wikipedia entry?
I mean, I can go look at it, but it could be boring. But
let's save it. Let's see if people want to hear about this. Like, I would love to just like go through the basics of the spec and think about what things could be better these days.
Like it feels like that's one of those specs that moves really slowly too.
Yes.
And like while the Taiwanese vendors are moving fast and breaking things, the ATX spec is slowly just keeping them all locked into the same basic shapes.
Yeah.
So I'm down to talk about that. That sounds fun.
Yes, for sure.
All
right. What do we call it there?
Yeah, that's a good place to stop. As always, if you have a question and you would like to submit it, you can send it to techpod@content.town. Emails slow down. Emails, it's funny. As the seasons ebb and flow, so do the emails. Mm-hmm. But the Q's seeking A's, always there. So we appreciate everybody who sent questions in.
There are 11 about 10 and a half Google Docs pages of questions here. So thank you to everybody who sends questions in and keeps these episodes going. Yeah,
we got a lot of good questions this month. I think I do want to do some more. There's some more that we didn't get to that I want to hit for the Patreon episode. So we'll do at least a few questions there. As always, Brand Will Made a Tech Pod is 100% listener supported. You can go to patreon.com/techpod. Again, that is patreon.com/techpod. And for as little, I don't know why my voice went up there at the end. That was a weird thing to do, but it's patreon.com/techpod. And for as little as $5 a month, you can gain access to the fabulous TechPod Discord. You can get access to the aforementioned patron exclusive episode that comes out every month. And those are the two things you get. But you get to know that you supported an independent podcast full of beautiful people like Brad and me, and join our community where you're going to learn about good stuff on the Discord too. Because there's a really funny conversation that happened in general this morning. I don't remember what it was, but I remember I woke up and I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is making me smile. Thank you all for the nice thing to wake up to. It's like the opposite of checking the news first thing in the morning. It's like, people are talking about fun stuff and having fun and enjoying themselves. And, anyway. So if you'd like to join the ranks of the TechPod patrons, you can go to patreon.com/techpod and be like our associate producer tier patrons, including Alejandro Navarro, Andre M. Burke, Arthur Geese, Ben Tallman, Eric Frey, Eric Klein, Eric the Fourth, soon to be the first after the Great Eric War, Felix Kramer. That's 4 Erics now.
All right, we're getting there.
They're growing. There's more Erics every day.
Only how many Erics do you think there are in the world? Now that there is an interesting. It's not barely even tech related, but determining the number of people with a certain given name in the world. Okay,
there's got to be more Matts than Erics, right? And probably more Dans than Matts.
Probably,
but maybe just in North America. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I figure the Bible names are extremely common, so
that's true.
I don't know. It's hard to say.
I don't know. Look, let's assume there's 300 million Erics worldwide.
How many Erics are there in the world? Also, I mean, are we counting alternate spellings? Probably.
Yeah, like ERICH, that still counts. Mm-hmm. I'd take Ericas. I'd allow Ericas. Yeah, if there's Ericas that want to be in the Eric/A club, they're allowed.
Sure.
I don't know. Anyway. Eric the Fourth, thank you. Thank you to all of our Erics. Felix Kramer, Graham Banks, Jad Rita, Jason Rooney the Ref, Matt Walker, Walkman 8080, Nathan Phelps, Sanchit Kumar, Steve Lynn, Thomas Shea, and Tom Hilton. And also a very special thank you to our executive producer tier patrons, including $. I think that's Bunny Fiend. Andrew Slosky, Chris, Paddle Creek Games, makers of Fractured Veil, David Allen, James Kamek, Joel Krauska, Jordan Lippett, Nick Johnston, Twinkle Twinkie. Wedge says Mike B says join the gift swap by October 31st, which I think is now delayed to November 5th because Wedge got called away on work. And also Pantheon, makers of the HS3 high-speed 3D printer. What do you think? There's like 100 million Erics worldwide? That's a lot of Erics.
I doubt it.
I'm going to see how many Erics were born last year.
What are we up to? 8 billion people now, right?
8 billion and change, I believe.
Like 100 million is not an insignificant fraction of the total number of people in the world.
Eric was the 213th most popular boy's name in 2021.
I'm sorry. What was the
213th?
That's not nowhere near high enough for.
So Oh, wow. Well, we were way off. It's nowhere near 300 million. In 2021, in the United States, there were 1,777 baby boys named Eric. One out of every 1,047 baby boys born in 2021 are named Eric. However, oh boy, there's a lot of variants. AARIK, that's number 655 in the rankings. If an individual named Eric meets 10,000 individuals over the course of his or her lifetime, he or she would have a 99.242% probability of meeting at least one other boy with the same given name.
Okay.
And a boy who enters elementary school would have at least a 20.8% chance probability of going to school with another boy named Eric. Let's see what the Erica situation. Erica's less popular than Eric, it turns out. Maybe
I did not meet another Brad until I was well into my 20s.
How is that possible?
I want to say.
And I knew 4 Brads in elementary school, probably.
Wow.
Well, Bradley. There's Bradley, there's Brad. There's, a lot of Brads.
Yeah.
Didn't know many Matts until high school. So 1 out of 1,000... Like, that's not going to scale across the entire world.
No,
but that means that most 8 million Erics worldwide, probably. Sorry, Eric.
Well, hey, 4 down, 7.9 million to go.
Yeah, the other 7 million and change of you better get on it. That's all I'm saying. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you all next week. Bye.